Welcome to PixelTunes Radio, a podcast where we have fun talking about video games and video game music. I am Mike.
And I'm Spidey Sense Ed.
Oh, I want a cool name. I'm the old Knuckle Mike. No, that's not gonna work. I don't know.
No.
I'm Mike.
Mr. Fantastic
Mike-erine. Yeah, there we go.
It sounds like Tangerine.
Tangerine? Yeah, I don't know. I like Wolverine. So, this is our Marvel episode. This is the first Marvel episode we have ever done, ever in the history of PixelTunes Radio.
Yes, we've actually gotten several compliments online about how people love our Marvel episode. And we enjoy compliments, and we're glad that you enjoyed that episode, but we've never done a Marvel episode before. So
no, that has changed.
Whichever episode that was that you listened to that you enjoyed.
This one.
Thank you.
This one.
But now you have a Marvel episode to listen to.
Yes, exactly. So we wanted to start off the episode with a little thing that, what are you calling it?
We like to call it Clarification Corner.
Clarification Corner.
And this will be, when it's necessary, a little segment where we clarify questions that we might have had in previous episodes based on new information, or, correct errors that we might have made, or so we each have something to clarify this episode. So Mike, why don't you go first?
Absolutely. So last episode, I bumbled a little bit. I actually had mentioned...
So last episode was the Matt Ezero...
That's correct,
Cygnus Destroyer episode.
Yep, and we got to talking about some Capcom composers, one of which was Mary Yamaguchi. He worked on the track that we had played, which was Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. I had said that Mary Yamaguchi worked on the Spawn Super Nintendo game. That is actually incorrect. It was actually Harumi Fujita. So I wanted to make that correction.
Awesome. Glad to get that clarified.
Word.
And mine isn't so much as a correction as it is just a little more information on something that we were talking about with Matt last episode regarding the Incredible Crash Dummies game. So one website had told me that the brothers Tim and Geoff Follin arranged Matt Furness's original tunes from the game. We had some conversation about that because the music really sounded like a Tim Follin track rather than a Matt Furness track. We've listened to both composers enough to kind of understand their styles and their influences. So we talked about it a little bit, and on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/PixelTunesRadio, I tagged Matt Furness in a post, and I was like, so do you know, can you kind of clarify for us who wrote the original tracks, where was the arrangement done? Turns out it was more like what we thought. So the Follins originally wrote the NES and Game Boy tracks.
Right.
And then Matt Furness took those songs and arranged them for the Game Gear and Master System ports.
Right.
So thank you, Mr. Furness, for helping us out with that. And definitely go ahead and listen to those Sega ports because he did a really, really good job. Even though, the Master System, Game Gear sound chip isn't nearly as powerful as the Game Boy is, he did a really spot-on translation of those songs. So they were really cool to listen to on a different sound chip.
He seems to have worked quite a bit with Sega machines in terms of soundtracks, like when we played the Mortal Kombat track and, a couple other tracks.
Yep.
It mostly sticks with Sega, and I think that's just kind of what he's really good at is FM. So.
Right, but this one was wavetable.
Oh, it was wavetable.
Because it was Game Gear and...
Interesting.
So he used that Sega PSG chip.
Very interesting.
Yeah, still a really good job, though.
Yes.
He even got those arpeggios down, which you very rarely hear on a Master System game.
Right. Well, we're going to start off getting into the first song of the day, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin. This is a really rockin' soundtrack.
Yes.
I really dig this. All of the tracks that I picked are really, really super rockin'.
That's mainly the way it went up until about, I'd say, like the late PlayStation, early PlayStation 2 era.
Yeah.
There was a really good amount of awesome rock tracks and Marvel songs.
True.
And then kind of after that with like Marvel Alliance, they really started going more of an orchestral cinematic sound.
Right. They wanted to fit with the movies.
Yeah, and we're kind of focusing on the earlier days where the soundtracks had a really good rock action feel to it.
Right.
So I think the latest track you'll hear on this podcast is from the PlayStation 1. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so this game, of course, stars Spider-Man, and this is the Sega CD version of the Genesis Spider-Man game, which apparently was a huge hit for Sega.
Yeah.
I mean, that game sold millions upon millions of Sega Genesises at the time. And so when they decided, hey, we're going to bring this out to the Sega CD, because why not, put the game out? And they changed quite a bit in the game. I mean, they added animated cutscenes, which Cam Clark who is a pretty famous voice actor. He's done, Leonardo and Ninja Turtles. He did like half the voice acting.
I remember
in this
Electro
game.
definitely sounds just like Leonardo. And I picked that out as soon as I played it when I was a kid.
Oh, it's so funny.
Leonardo.
That's Leonardo.
And Peter Renaday did the voice of Kingpin.
That's right.
He's Splinter.
His
voice sounds identical to Splinter's too. It's really funny.
Yeah, no, that is true. So a lot of the people that were in this game in terms of the animated cutscenes came right from that 80s, 90s animation block of people.
Yeah.
So this soundtrack actually was completely redone. It was created by Spencer Nilsen and David Young. And Spencer Nilsen has done a ton of work on various different Sega CD games. He actually translated Echo the Dolphin, if I recall, right? Also did a lot of work on Sega CD, Sonic CD. He did the North American version, which has a completely different soundtrack than this Mega CD version. Adventures of Batman and Robin, which was kind of similar to Amazing Spider-Man vs. Kingpin in the sense that it added a bunch of cutscenes and it used a bunch of animated voice actors, actually all from the Batman and Robin cartoon, the animated Adventures of Batman. Jurassic Park, Batman Returns, Echo the Tides of Time. So he's done mostly conversions for Sega CD games and also worked on a number of film scores and...
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call them conversions. They're completely different soundtracks.
Right. It's more in terms of the games were converted over to
Sega
CD and they were kind of like, hey, let's just start up a whole new soundtrack. So they did that. I really dig this game. The only problem that I have with the tracks themselves, aside from the fact that they don't really have names. I mean, the song that we picked is called Track 3. That's pretty much the best way to put it because it's the third track on the album. And this is a really good track. I mean, it starts off with some really cool keyboards and then it kind of goes into this really just rockin' riff, and right before it kind of speeds up and just gets really pumping.
It's just really, really good rock music.
Yeah.
I knew it was Spencer Nilsen. I mean, we've talked about him in the past when we did our Beyond Chiptune episode. This was one of the few composers that really you had a name and a face to when the games were current, because the magazines would do interviews with him because he had this whole giant studio, which was kind of unheard of in North America before.
Yeah.
So, we knew that he did Sonic CD, we knew that he did Spider-Man, we knew that he did Echo, but all three of those really popular Sega CD titles at the time just sounded so different from each other, and it was really, really cool that he could do just straight up like American rock in this one, and then do more of like an electronic or a little more mellow kind of a soundtrack for Echo, and then do a very video game-oriented soundtrack for Sonic. All performed by the same musicians, all written by the same people. He did this along with David Young, who co-composed Sonic CD, Spider-Man, and Echo along with him. And then he also did quality assurance and marketing for a whole bunch of different games as well, mostly with Sega. He actually played bass on the soundtrack for BioShock 2. But I really liked this game growing up. It was one of my favorite Sega CD games. Spider-Man just controlled very well. I like the kind of non-linear aspect to it, where you could kind of choose levels from the New York City map, and it was a genuine New York City map that you could kind of go around in. And they were you could collect magazine covers and stuff. It had a lot of those qualities that later games have with unlockable content and stuff that was kind of a predecessor to those collectibles and interactive things that you could do in games outside of the actual gameplay that a lot of games, because they weren't on CDs, didn't have at the time. So really neat.
I love the CD quality, and I mean, you could literally throw this in a CD player and play it for your mom, and she'd be like, oh, this is a rockin' tune. But the biggest problem that I have is when you're playing the game, the tracks aren't labeled for one specific level. So for example, this song, Track 3, doesn't play in only one place in a game. It's not structured that way. So basically the music loops. So it just plays the track, plays the next track, plays the next track, almost as if you threw a CD on in the background. Not a big fan of that.
Yeah, see, I enjoyed the entire soundtrack, so I was always like, ooh, I wonder which track is going to play next. So I was always happily surprised whenever I wandered into a level and a new track was playing. But I can understand why you'd want to have one particular track that you could kind of associate with a particular part of. And, there are areas where you're on top of city buildings and where you're in the sewer, and when you're in different locations, and it might have been cool to have more of a darker, sludgier metal track for the sewers, and then the more high-soaring, keyboard-driven rock track for the...
a big fight.
Yeah. Or you're on top of skyscrapers or something like that. So I can understand where you're coming from.
Also, when music ends, especially if it's a track that fades, it fades out and then there's silence. and you're
until
still
it loads
fighting
the song
until it loads
again.
the next song. And that was a big complaint that I had about Final Fight CD. Great music. It's just you'll be in the middle of a fight and then you're waiting for the next track to load. And
just
there's
that early
no
CD
audio.
technology.
Yeah.
They did what they could at the time.
Oh well. But yeah, this is a great song, really awesome, like heavy metal rock track. So check it out. This is Spider-Man versus the Kingpin from the 1993 Sega CD game.
My spider sense is tingling.
Welcome back. That was from Silver Surfer for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The song and the game came out in 1990, and that was the High Score song. High Score Thong.
High Score Thong.
Yes.
From Silver Surfer.
Oh boy. And this track was created, molded, and formed by Tim Follin himself. Tell me, Ed, why did you pick this track?
Isn't it obvious?
Well, aside from the fact that it's Tim Follin, because to be honest, this is a good song, but not my favorite song off the Silver Surfer soundtrack.
Okay, so for one, we have been, every single episode, it seems, we talk about eventually doing a Tim Follin episode.
Right.
And I'd like to save a lot of the really, really memorable and popular stuff for that episode.
So you're telling me that we're gonna hear a Silver Surfer track on your official Tim Follin
I'd like
episode.
to keep as many of those level stages in reserve as possible.
Okay.
To pick from.
You need to just
later
make
on.
it happen, man.
I will. We always have cool guests that want to be on the show.
Yeah.
And cool ideas for themes, and it's like, it seems to get pushed on the back burner further and further. So
you just make it happen.
yeah. Anyways,
bullet.
this is kind of interesting because when I was a kid,
Oh boy, here we go.
I rented this game.
I'm
And of
so
course
sorry.
this game is really, really difficult. I also back at that point would, record music on my stereo and like listen to it elsewhere, and I've talked about that before. So this was one of the few tracks that I could get from this game when I rented it that I could listen to without any sound effects or anything, because you
Right.
couldn't, A, I couldn't get very far in the game to get the later tracks, but B, this one was just really kind of cool, and it was one of the ones that I remember the most, I guess, from the game, because I would listen to it even after I returned it from the rental because I had recorded it. And I really like how he takes that like do 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 and changes it up like over and over and over again throughout the whole song, and just makes it sound cooler and cooler, and adding arpeggios and different instruments, and
Those arpeggios are intense.
it's just a really groovy, fun track that kind of sits apart in sound from the rest of the very kind of spacey disco sounding, action levels in the game. So I really wanted to kind of focus on this one and show how cool it was.
Yeah, the arpeggios alone, it's a Tim Follin track, or at least it's a track from a European composer in most cases, because they were very heavy with arpeggios.
Yes, yeah. Very few Japanese composers used arpeggios, which is interesting. It was something that was mostly developed on, the C64,
Right.
which Japanese developers really didn't use or make games for the C64 at all. So that style never really became popular over there.
True. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I dig this track. I completely agree with you. It's a very funky, very groovy track, and then it kind of bounces into those arpeggios, and then you're just kind of like, oh, well, that kind of came out of nowhere.
Just like that Salsa's track we played last episode.
Yeah, exactly.
He likes to just blast you.
Oh, it's great. So as far as this game goes, I own it for nostalgia purposes.
Yeah.
I would say I really, really liked the Angry Video Game Nerd's review of this. I really like his stuff, but I tend to stay away from like all the fecal humor that he uses. I'm not a big fan of it. This review, I think, was probably one of his best because he focused on the game and the ridiculousness of the shots coming at you and how you barely could see them in this game. And I think that's what kind of sold me on doing my own review show is hey, I can talk about stuff like that as well. And with Silver Surfer, man, this game is just so brutally hard. I mean, you don't think it at first. You're like, oh, whatever. I could totally beat this game. And as you're going through, it's a really difficult shooter. It really is. And the fact that you can't touch anything at all, and you don't know sometimes what to touch or what to go over, that is, I would say, in my opinion, the two most frustrating parts of the game.
I've watched YouTube videos,
Yeah.
People that are really good at the game can beat it, without even losing a life.
Yeah.
And I've kind of compared the videos to each other. It seems there's literally only one way to play this game. You need to be in specific points at specific times.
Oh, it's all about
follow
memorization.
one path.
Oh, yeah.
There's no deviation whatsoever. Like I've talked about R-Type in the past about how it's a memorization style shmup, and that you need to know what's coming at you, but no title in the R-Type series is so specific that you need to literally be on specific pixels not to get hit. And this game just demands perfection throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
And so it's not for everybody. It's not for anybody except for a few select people who have really, really kind of poured time and effort and concentration into this game. So it's a shame because the soundtrack is one of Follin's best. There's no sound test, so very few people are gonna, until the future, which is the present now, where NSF files and recorded soundtracks on YouTube are available. People just didn't even know that these soundtracks towards the end of the game even existed. And that's a real shame.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would say that about Tim Follin, I would probably say the same thing about Pictionary. I had no clue that a Pictionary game had such amazing music. And so if you haven't checked out that one yet, also check that out. I think we played a track off of Pictionary at some point. And if we didn't, then shame on us.
Saving that one up.
Saving that one. Ed's got it in his little back pocket.
Pictionary in my back pocket.
He's got a little tiny baby sandwich made, and it's got peanut butter and jam and little Tim Follin tracks.
Follin spread.
Follin spread. Just
Follin
right
brand spread.
Oh my god.
So, Silver Surfer was not the only Follin composed Marvel game. There were quite a few of them, actually.
Yeah,
so there was also Wolverine.
Oh, let's not talk about
from
that
before.
Game. Let's not talk about
Bad game, fantastic soundtrack, but Geoff, I think, mostly worked on that one.
Oh man, that game. I hate that game so much.
Okay, but we're not talking about that one. We're talking about a game that's a little less bad. One that you've actually reviewed on your video series.
Yes.
And this was the one that Matt Ezra also worked with you.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode. Yeah, Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge.
And I think of the 8 and 16-bit era soundtracks, this is my favorite Tim Follin, Geoff Follin composed soundtrack.
This is a phenomenal soundtrack. I mean, just every track oozes just flavor.
He pulled out all the stops.
Yeah.
We're going to play the track from the Cyclops level.
Got a little bit of a Cyclops block coming up for you.
Yeah. I read an interview from Tim Follin that the interviewer asked him which was his favorite retro-styled game that he worked on, and he said actually it was Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge.
Oh, that's cool.
Because they gave him a lot of freedom, and they told him to just kind of be cheesy and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so he really enjoyed just being able to... He had this great sound driver that Stephen Ruddy developed for him for the Super Nintendo. His older brother, Mike Follin, was a programmer on the game, and he was working with Geoff, so he had all these people that surrounded him that have been with him since almost the beginning. So he just felt that he was really comfortable in a good place, and he just really went for broke, just throwing everything he could at this soundtrack.
I heard the game was a real hell to develop for, and that I heard somewhere, if I recall, I think I read it in an interview at Retro Gamer, where they said that they lost the Mortal Kombat license, if I recall.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they basically were like, this game needs to be perfect, like it needs to be great. I guess like, who published it? LJN, right? Yeah, published it. Mm-hmm. And I guess they were really breathing down their necks or...
Interesting. Yeah, well, this was all developed by Software Creations, which both of the Follins were employed by for quite a number of years.
But they ended up working the and
LJN was notorious for like giving you a low budget and a low amount of time and saying, this is our licensed game, put it out, we don't care. But they still managed to do a very good job with it.
What was their name from Software Creations that went on to do Plock? Pickford?
The Pickford Brothers.
Pickford Brothers, yeah.
Steve Pickford and I forgot his brother's name.
Well, they worked for Software Creations as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what I read, is that Spider-Man X-Men the game was a real hell to develop for. This track is a mix of jazz, just like amazing jazz. That bass line is just all over the place, and those drums with the cymbal with the
the percussion samples are so good in this. Yeah, it sounds like a real kit.
Oh yeah, with the ride cymbal and just real light on the ride cymbal, just riding that, and just going full blast into a total like progressive rock track right out of the 70s. Exactly. And then you've got this like spacey feel that sounds almost like a Goblin track from like one of the 70s horror movies that Goblin worked off of.
Totally.
Because it gets all kind of spacey and it kind of like turns into this weird like spacey atmosphere where he's got the organs going and these
especially like
going these keynotes, like this run of the keys on the keyboard.
Storm's theme definitely had a lot of that too, where very wispy kind of underwater sounding. Yeah, and they nailed that soundtrack atmosphere in terms of Storm's level. And usually the Follins didn't really care what their game was about. They just wanted to make awesome music. They just threw it in a game. But this is one of the first games where I think they really had kind of a theme to go with. There's that really cool carnival theme for Wolverine's stage,
level.
and then the storm theme where it was just kind of atmospheric and almost sounded like weather, and they had like the breathing in the background. So this is one of those titles where they really kind of matched up, and I think probably having Mike Follin helping out on programming for this game, they really had more of a dialogue of communication.
That's true.
What they're putting in the game and what they wanted the soundtrack to be like. So overall, the game obviously has its flaws, but I think the soundtrack definitely is one of those kind of soundtracks that makes you want to keep playing the game regardless of the quality of the game. It's playable enough to enjoy, but listening to that soundtrack throughout it just really helped you want to finish the game, which I never ended up doing.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a really difficult game, so it's not an easy task to beat it.
Yeah, I still have actually the tape that I recorded this on when I rented it back in the day, and I had every single song except for the boss background music because I was never able to make it to the boss. I can get to the second set of levels where you can play as a character, etc. But unfortunately, just never got that far. But
wow.
Oh well, let's get into the music.
Yes, this is Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge. This game came out in 1992. This is the Super Nintendo version, of course, and this is Cyclops' stage, and we'll be back in a brief bit with another Cyclops track. Welcome back. That was our last half of our Cyclops block.
I love Mark Summers. He was so good on Double Dare.
Mark Summers. That's not Cyclops. That's Scott Summers.
Oh, my bad.
Do you remember the Double Dare Sting?
Double Dare Sting.
You don't remember the you remember the show, and you remember how they had the music or whatever. It was very like 80s.
Oh yeah.
But my favorite part of Double Dare was when you were running out of time during the physical challenges, and they would have that sting of music. It'd be like,
okay, yeah. I need to be done.
And that's it. And I was always like, that last note always made me crack up because I was waiting for something else to happen, and it never would come.
Gotcha.
Yeah, anyway, so not Mark Summers, Scott Summers, aka Cyclops from the X-Men. This track was from X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, which was the 1995 Super Nintendo game, which was a great game.
From Capcom.
From Capcom, yes. And it was a really good track. I mean, I picked this track, obviously. It has every element that I could ever want in a song. It has galloping drums with a galloping bass line. It's got overdriven Capcom guitar on the Super Nintendo with
various octaves.
With notes with various octaves, basically playing the same part, but harmonizing, exactly. On top of that, it's in an X-Men game. I mean, win for me. So,
too bad it wasn't in Wolverine's level, though.
Wolverine's level had a really good song, but I always thought it was a little thrashier. This was more my style. I did like thrash music, like thrash metal, but the melodies of the Cyclops level really kind of nailed it for me. The X Hunters, which is one of my favorite video game music cover bands, snuck this track in to...
It does sound a lot like Mega Man X.
It does. They snuck this track into their Storm Eagles remix.
Ah, okay.
And so I'll have to post it on the channel because it's a really, really good rendition of the X-Men Mutant Apocalypse Cyclops level. It's really, really good. And the sad part is that it's so short because they only play the really crazy overdriven part with the guitars. The big problem I have with this track is the guitars kind of flatten out when they do this like crazy solo effect, and they end up sounding like flutes almost. And they have that very fluty feel, and I lose interest, and I'm just like, all right, when's the good part coming back? And then it comes right back, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and I guess it makes sense because Setsuo Yamamoto did work on Mega Man X. He also worked on the two Mega Man The Power Fighters arcade games.
That makes sense.
Which were a lot of remixes and like redone versions of existing Mega Man songs.
But that was also kind of very high energy, overdriven type music.
Well, yeah, the second one used Q sound,
right.
So it sounded a lot more like the SNES.
Yeah, kind of sounded like Puzzle Fighter. A little bit. Yeah, in terms of the sound font.
Yeah, Pixelated Audio, another video game music podcast that we're big fans of, recently did a whole episode based on the two Power Fighters soundtracks, and it's really good. So if you like this track, check that episode out. You'd really enjoy it.
Definitely.
I pretty much agree with everything you say. I mean, it's not so much my style of music as it is yours.
Yeah.
But of the kind of rock-oriented Capcom SNES songs, it is a really good one. I mean, I kind of grew up with this game. I talked about this on the puzzle game episode. We had a set collection of games at my grandparents' house that we'd play every Sunday, and this was one of those games.
Oh,
so
really?
This game reminds me of sitting in my grandparents' family room in the basement, rocking out with Psylocke and Gambit and just having a lot of fun with it. It's a really solid game. I didn't really get very good at it because I only played it like once a week.
It's a really hard game.
It is pretty difficult. It's not as easy as like Marvel Superheroes is. I think Marvel Superheroes is a little more on the easy side.
Yeah, I mean, with X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, I think the bosses were very difficult.
Yeah, that Wolverine stage was pretty nasty with those Sentinels.
It's actually the Wolverine stage. The most difficult part is when you're climbing up the Sentinel, and like the arm of the Sentinel or whatever, or the spine. I think you're climbing up the spine, and the pieces are dropping.
Yes.
And you've got to get to the complete opposite side. Cyclops' level, you're in the jungle, and you're just kind of going through the level, and you end up on a train, and it's really cool. You're in like Genosha, and I really dig the whole game's atmosphere. I mean, every level and every character has their own level that makes them unique to that level.
Which is kind of a parallel to Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge, too, where characters at the beginning start off with their own levels.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a trope for a lot of Marvel games, I think, where you had multiple characters. But this game was shortly followed up by Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems, which was a similar game, almost like a spiritual sequel.
Right.
But you could pick whichever character you want for any levels. And I think that didn't make the game as fun as Mutant Apocalypse.
Yeah, I think that with Mutant Apocalypse, every character that you picked had their own level, but when you advanced further in the game, you could pick any character.
Right, you were free to pick, as long as they didn't die before that.
Exactly. With Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems, I mean, musically, which this, by the way, is the next track we're getting into, this game is pretty much identical to X-Men Mutant Apocalypse in terms of style. I mean, Wolverine's in the game, and he plays exactly the same as he did in X-Men Mutant Apocalypse.
Yes.
Then you can play as Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's a really fun game. I really like Marvel Superheroes War of the Gem. I think I liked X-Men Mutant Apocalypse more, though.
Yeah, I think the controls felt a little more loose in Marvel Superheroes. I like that in like the heavier hits on Mutant Apocalypse, the game would kind of like pause for that split second, similar to like they do in Battletoads, and it made the hits feel kind of heavier and tighter. And I think the hit detection and hit boxes on the characters were a little smaller and made the game feel a little bit tighter, whereas Marvel Superheroes, there's a lot of cheap hits, and there's a lot of times where something would fly at you and, like, you know, not get all the way to you before it ended up knocking you backwards, and I don't know, it didn't feel as solid, almost like it was rushed out after they had a decent success with Mutant Apocalypse. Yeah,
I think ultimately, I mean, when you're talking about a team that probably it was almost the same team, or maybe they were working on it at the same time, but you're talking about a year's difference in terms of when it came out here in America, 1995 versus 1996. Different composers, too. This Marvel Superheroes track that we're going to play is called The Amazon, and the composers were Takane Okubo and Katsunari Kitajima. Katsunari Kitajima actually did the composition on the track, so we can credit him for actually composing and arranging the track. Takane Okubo, I believe, just did sound effects. There's not much information on Okubo. He was credited for
sound arrange and design.
Right.
That could mean really anything.
Kitajima definitely was the one who composed the track. And, I mean, the track itself is really cool. It's one of the better tracks. I'm not a big fan of this soundtrack. I think just the sound driver that they used is not as good as in X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. Very, very high-pitched, tinny sound for the Super Nintendo, which the Super Nintendo is capable of some really meaty, punchy stuff. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, it still rode that nice balance between really excellent sound in terms of like actual instruments, like guitars sounded like guitars, organs sounded like organs, drums sounded like drums. In this game, everything just kind of sounds
like it's through a tin can.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It had more of an orchestral, like more strings and violins in the background.
Yeah, I think they were trying to make it more epic because it's kind of sort of based on the Infinity War. So
yeah, which was actually one of my favorite comic series when I was a kid. So it was cool being able to see Thanos and Nebula and all that stuff. I wish they would let you play as Adam Warlock.
That would have been
in this
cool.
game.
That would have been cool.
Because he appears at the beginning and the end, but
right. Well, the whole point of the game is he gathers everybody up.
Yeah, he's the whole kind of main protagonist through the whole thing, and he didn't have very many action sequences during the game or the comic series itself, but still, it would have been kind of neat. He's a cool looking character.
X-Men Mutant Apocalypse kind of has the same thing. I mean, you know, basically Apocalypse is rather stirring up some trouble, and you know, basically Professor X is like, "Yo, X dudes and dudettes, go take care of that. I'm gonna go take a nap. Thanks. See you later."
It's cool because Guardians of the Galaxy, Thanos and Nebula are in the movie, and what it sounds like towards the end of the movie. And I don't know if this has been officially announced yet or not. I haven't been following, but it sounds like they're moving towards what might be a movie adaptation of the Infinity Wars.
I heard that was going to be like Avengers 3.
That would be really, really cool. Yeah. I love that series, and it would be great to see that brought to life. So that would kind of like this would almost be like a video game adaptation of that movie just done
Right.
in the past, and that would be kind of neat.
That'd be neat.
And then the other cool thing about the Marvel Gems, or the Marvel Superheroes game, is with the gems, once you collect the gems in the game, you can assign those gems to your character, so you can kind of boost their attributes.
Right, that's
And it was
right.
really cool, so you could like take the Hulk and give him the speed gem, so you'd have the speed and the power at the same time, or you can give the power attribute to Spider-Man, so you'd be fast and powerful, and so it kind of made the game kind of customizable.
Yeah, a little
and
bit.
you could pick one character throughout the entire thing. So if you wanted to play like the Captain America game, you could just keep picking Captain America all the way through, and as long as you didn't run out of his guys, you could pretty much make it his game.
That's
so,
true.
It's kind of neat.
This song, The Amazon, is hilarious because you've got this very tribal drum and bass line kind of going, and then it's almost as if the bassist gets shoved out of the way for another bassist who's just doing this crazy, like, funky, like,
So
like
you got
all
these
over the
dueling
place.
basses at the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
really
it's
cool.
so funny. And then it kind of moves into this, like, disco era funk song, and it's got these really cool, like, stylized, kind of uplifting notes that kind of
brass
rise.
section.
Yeah, brass section that kind of like rises up. It's a really good track. This is one of the best tracks on the soundtrack. This and Alaska, I'd say, are my two favorite
Yeah,
tracks.
that's a good one too.
Yeah. I say we just get on to the music since we've kind of talked about it. This is Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems. Game came out in 1996 for the Super Nintendo, and this is The Amazon.
Enjoy.
This summer, grab onto your Nintendo 64 controller for the ride of your life in the upcoming action title starring everyone's favorite Marvel mutant, Wolverine.
Oh no. Here we go.
Wolverine's got a shady past, and it gets even shadier in this game with an original script written by comic book mastermind Rob Liefeld.
Well, at least I know the story will suck.
Excuse me?
What?
I'm trying to do a voiceover for an upcoming video game, do you mind?
Oh, sorry.
Complete with 12 levels, Wolverine traverses all kinds of places such as Arcade's Pinball Game O' Death, Apocalypse's Pyramid Lair, and Magneto's Asteroid M. Make Wolverine jump through flaming hoop upon hoop, narrowly escaping an arbitrary countdown clock as he eventually gets to an exit. With just enough time to spare, you're in for the ride of your life in Wolverine 64.
All complete with Nintendo 64 fog, including the outer space levels, I bet.
Yeah, well, at least I'm not ugly.
Hey, I heard that.
Well, maybe if you stopped interrupting.
Fine.
With amazing graphics, a killer story, and a brand new soundtrack by Tommy Tallarico, Wolverine 64 is going to be Game of the Year. Look out for this Titus Software developed game this summer.
And look for it in bargain bins beginning in the fall.
Hey, listen, I can't believe you're interrupting me for like
Seriously,
the fifth time.
this is a Wolverine N64
Well,
game.
you
What
can't
kind
blame
of
me. I'm
quality
just
do
trying
you
to do my
expect?
job.
Terrible
You know,
on the
this
NES.
is
It's gonna be
ridiculous.
terrible on the
Like,
N64.
you know, you're not being
It's only
given a
Tommy
chance.
Tallarico
Titus
with the
Software
kids'
is
phone.
bringing it.
Welcome back. That last track was from a little game I like to call
Captain America and the Avengers!
There we go.
America still needs your help!
Thank you, Wonder Man.
I like how he separates wonder. Like,
Thank you, Wonder Man.
Yeah, in case they decided to have a Wonder Pet in there or something.
Wonder Man.
yeah. I like this game. This game is great on the Genesis. It's
really hard.
It really is. It's very difficult. I got pretty far in this. Even playing 2-player, it's a really difficult game, and it does not let up. It's basically beat 'em up, but very similar to the arcade game of the same name. You are going through the game, meeting up with all these bad guys. There's a lot of flying levels actually, where like it's a shooter.
Yeah.
And you can, basically Wonder Man shows up and gives you like this little thing if you can't fly. It's like this little surfboard type thing that turns into like this weird rocket jetpack thing. I don't know, it's weird. But it's a
wonder device.
Yeah, it's a wonder device. There you go. That's a good idea.
But I like the fact that this game, the backgrounds almost look hand painted.
Yeah.
Like there really kind of has a distinct graphical style to it. What I don't like about the game is that there's no, I guess like in Final Fight, you can kind of learn how to dodge the enemies and you can hit enemies and perform combos on them without getting hit back. But it's like with this, when you attack enemies, they could just turn around and hit you. I mean, it's like your energy continually drains regardless of what you do. And it was designed like that because
that's how the arcade game was designed.
Yeah. But it makes it really, really frustrating on a home console.
The difficult part about this game is exactly like you said, because the game was designed for the arcade, they didn't transition it to the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo the way that it should have been originally intended, where it's basically you want to be able to play the game, and even if you have limited continues, you want to somehow be able to dodge, and there's not really a proper dodge option.
Right, or a way to avoid attacks, or just a combo that would kind of incapacitate the enemies so you can at least get 4 or 5 punches in on them before getting knocked back yourself. So,
and you kind of have to take enemies out individually one by one.
Right.
They, especially the bosses, can be really brutal on your life bar.
It works a lot better in multiplayer, I think.
I agree.
You can kind of manage the screen a little bit better.
True.
The soundtrack itself came in multiple flavors. You can get the arcade version, the SNES version, or the Genesis version. The Genesis version is both of our favorites. I think it sounds the best. They used Hitoshi Sakimoto's Terpsichorean Genesis sound driver for the music, which is a fantastic driver, and Sakimoto actually worked on the soundtrack himself for the Genesis port, so I think that's what makes it sound the best out of all of them.
Sakimoto knows how to handle bass, and this song is extremely bass heavy.
Agreed.
Where basically the whole song is driven by the bass, and eventually the bass just kind of takes over, and it's just like, you know what, this weird space part of the song is going on where it's making all weird animal noises.
Who is driving? Bass is driving.
Bass is driving. How can that be? And so the bass line just basically takes upfront action. It's like, listen, screw it. I'm just gonna,
Do my thing.
I love that. Like, any track that has a random ass bass solo, like, bring it on, man.
Come on, man. Of course. Super
Bass
EDF
solos.
in the house.
That's right. That's right. Especially that sweet FM bass.
Yes.
I concur. So now Shogo Sakai also worked on this track as well as Tatsuya Kiyoshi. So
Correct.
they basically were the arrangers, or were they more the composers? Because you said the Sakamoto.
I think all three of them worked on
Yeah.
different compositions, but they all use Sakimoto's sound driver, at least for the Genesis.
Right.
I'm not sure that Sakimoto worked on the arcade version of this game.
Okay.
I know he's listed for...
Well, this is a Data East game, and he's done a lot, like when he did Midnight Resistance and he brought that over to the Genesis. That was an arcade game made by, I think it was Data East, if I recall. Wasn't Midnight Resistance?
Yeah, you're
that
right.
was
Yeah,
Data
because Tatsuya Kiuchi also worked on the arcade version of Midnight Resistance.
Right,
that
right.
Soundtrack.
So what I'm thinking is that possibly Hitoshi Sakamoto worked on the Genesis port and probably arranged it and brought it over to the Genesis, whereas Tatsuya Kiyoshi and Shogo Sakai worked on...
Tomoyoshi Sato and Tatsuya Kiuchi worked on the arcade version.
Okay.
And then Shogo Sakai and Sakimoto did the arrangement for the Genesis version.
Okay.
So
That
there you
makes
go.
sense.
And Shogo Sakai we just talked about last episode because he did Bloody Wolf for
right.
TurboGrafx 16.
That's right.
Also Mother 3 and then Kirby titles later on.
Right, yeah. And Hitoshi Sakamoto has a pretty wide range of music that we've gone into before.
Huge amount of music under his belt.
Yeah, definitely.
But Kiuchi also worked on Bloody Wolf as well, so they worked on that together.
Okay.
And Chelnov Atomic Runner. Have you ever played that game?
No.
Really, really fun.
Is it?
It's on a lot of different systems, but it's got this super, super catchy main theme that I want to find an episode I can play the track in eventually, and it's just really, really good. So that's a really good title from Kiuchi.
Is it on the FM Towns Marty?
It is on the X68000.
I want nothing to do with it unless it's on the FM Towns Marty.
There aren't very many games on the FM Towns Marty, so you're kind of limiting yourself.
I
there.
know.
That's unfortunate.
I don't even have an FM Towns Marty. I just think the name of the system is really funny.
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Marty. But Kiuchi actually also worked on Two Crude Dudes. He did the arcade version of that.
Two crude dudes.
He did mostly arcade titles.
Listen,
so
those dudes are way too crude for you.
Too crude for me.
All right.
Oh, who would win in a fight, bad dudes or crude dudes? Based on the name alone.
You know what? I don't think I'm going to answer that.
We'll have to answer that in a future show.
I don't think I'm going to answer that.
Okay.
We should do an episode where it's just
do a Facebook
any game with the word dude in it.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Dude games.
Dude.
Dude games.
Dude. Anyways, so Kiuchi also worked on RoboCop 2, the arcade game, which was pretty good. And then he did the Joe and Mac soundtracks.
Those were good.
Yeah, the arcade version of the first one, and then he did the Super Nintendo version of Joe and Mac 2 Lost in Tropics.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Which was cool.
Game had a little bit more of an RPG feel to it than the first game did.
Yeah, first one was kind of a straight up action title.
action, but yeah.
Yep. So that's my take on Captain America and the Avengers.
Yeah, not
Good
much to
title.
say.
Definitely play it on the Genesis if you want to
Really-
choose between console versions.
Really hard game, really great music.
Yeah.
I also really like the little color panels that they put in the beginning, and everything looks like a comic book.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? That's what I really like. It's almost, I don't want to say cel shading, but it's like if 2D had cel
It's like
shading.
inking, comic inking.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly.
So Data East worked on the Genesis version themselves and did the direct port, but they hired Mindscape to do the SNES version, and they just did not do a very good job.
No, the Super
unfortunately.
Nintendo
So-
version is not as good as the Genesis.
So grab that Genesis version if you're at the store and looking at new beat 'em ups to pick out.
Definitely.
What's our next game?
Spider-Man Maximum Carnage.
That was a fun game. Speaking of beat 'em ups, a lot of
This-
beat 'em ups in this episode.
This was a really difficult game.
You thought so?
Very, very difficult.
Huh.
I had to use Game Genie to beat this game.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, it was really hard. I don't know, maybe it was just me. But
I guess I just got the pattern down.
I don't know.
I really liked using Venom.
I mean, I
think
got-
it's a lot easier to use than.
I got far. Like, I got really far by myself without any help. I think I got a little past Venom's first level. That level with... There's a level with Venom
Well, you
where
can pick. You
he's...
can choose.
Not in the beginning.
Not in the beginning,
The
but
beginning
later
you're
on
just
you can
Spider-Man.
choose who you
Yeah,
wanna
later
be.
on. There's that level with the bank. I think it's a bank. You're walking up like a white stair. You're just like this giant black symbiote Venom walking up this hill. in like a San Francisco-esque location, which is just giant hills. It's fun. I mean, the game, I love when you hit the bad guys. It's just every punch is like a beefy smack. Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah, everything just sounds really smackified. Just
it's true. It's
really
very true.
Very true. So, soundtrack-wise, the game was composed by Green Jelly, also known as Green Jello, but they had to change their name for obvious reasons. Copyright. And so Green Jelly actually were hired by Acclaim Entertainment to do Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage, which is the technical name of the game. This game was actually based on the Maximum Carnage storyline, where you kind of see Carnage and he's another symbiote and he escapes from prison. And,
good old Cletus.
Yep. And so you gotta basically
get him back
destroy
under
him.
control.
Yeah, basically. This game actually has recorded music that actually made it onto Green Jelly albums. Or Green Jelly.
Just the Maximum Carnage track.
Right,
they wrote
the Maximum
a track called
Carnage
Maximum
track.
Carnage, and it was
Right,
like the
correct.
lead track for their second album or something like
Right, but a computerized rendition of the song was translated into the game.
Yeah.
So basically they obviously couldn't put the soundtrack note for note in the game, so a lot of stuff had to be kind of smoothed out, and obviously the vocals were moved and whatnot, and basically they computerized it. Portions of the soundtrack also made it into Separation Anxiety, which was the sequel to Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, and Chris Jojo worked on both of those. I'm not sure how much he actually composed himself and how much Green Jelly worked on him.
He did guitar work, apparently, with Maximum Carnage at least.
Yeah, he's credited as musician.
Right.
But I want to say that I don't know that the guys from Green Jelly were going to be able to work with Super Nintendo and Genesis hardware to make their tracks.
Yeah.
So, Chris Jojo is an old school guy as far
Right.
back as C64. Hundreds of games to his credit. So I'm pretty sure that he either worked directly with the band or he just got the transcriptions and then, ported the soundtrack to the different systems. So, he worked on both of those Spider-Man titles that Green Jelly kind of had a hand in. So whether those are original compositions from Chris or Green Jelly or who belongs to what, nobody really knows.
Yeah.
But it does have a very cohesive kind of rock metal feel to it, and it's all really good.
Yeah, I mean, this song translated, I have the original track that I've heard, and I actually prefer the real track
Yeah,
with the
me too.
vocals. It's a great song, but I kind of feel like, and this version is way, way, way better than the Genesis version.
Yes.
This is the definitive version of the song, aside from the actual real track that's on Green Jelly albums. But this particular song, I would say, is the most iconic in my opinion. When you boot up this game, you listen to this song, you're watching Spider-Man and Venom appear on the screen, and the little spider icon appears, and you see, Maximum Carnage and everything. This is kind of the song that, I would listen to this song and I would sit there and listen to it over and over and over again, listening to it loop, because this was the song that I kind of fell in love with. And then the rest of the game had really good music as well. Really great, high energy, overdriven guitar, as has been the theme, throughout this entire episode. But when it comes to Maximum Carnage, I just think that there are parts of the track that kind of fall short. So it sounds good up to a certain point, and then it kind of falls into this weird, really fast guitar playing, almost like they're trying to move into a solo, and that's when I kind of feel like the song falls flat. But when they get into the main verse and they get into the main riff again, that's when the song starts to pick back up. And I don't know, I think ultimately I have a feeling that it's something that they did because they couldn't figure out how to transition into a chorus. You know what I mean?
I guess I can see that.
And so they just kind of were like, oh, let's just put this part in and make it sound good. You know what I mean? So,
or they just didn't really have the skill to get, a good solo sound, and,
Right.
and just the engine couldn't keep up with what they were trying to do.
possibly. But I think that the guitar sounds great on this track. It's really grungy, dark, and
Definitely indicative of the
Tight.
times of current music. At
absolutely,
that point.
yeah. If you're thinking of listening to Green Jelly, it all sounds like Green Jelly, which is really cool. So let's get into the track. This is Spider-Man Maximum Carnage. Again, this is Super Nintendo version, because nobody's going to listen to the Genesis version. 1994 was the year of release, and this track, again, is called Maximum Carnage. For years, gamers have had fun controlling their favorite Marvel superheroes with their fingers. But fingers are lame, right? all your fingers are good for is picking your nose. That's why we at Microhard Studios have developed Marvel Connect.
I'm the best there is at what I do, bub.
The Marvel Universe explodes with awesome voice-controlled action. Shout your hero catchphrases at your Xbox system thingy and watch your character save the day again and again.
My spidey sense is tingling.
And in multiplayer mode, use even more catchphrases to team up with your friends.
Avengers assemble! Avengers assemble!
Avengers assemble!
Avengers assemble!
Okay, look, we know this game sucks, but it's got a Marvel logo on the cover, so ka-ching, you know what I mean?
Hulk smack, really? Is this all I do? Shout dumb stuff at the TV? I can shout dumb stuff at my grandma and have more fun than playing this pile of...
Marvel Connect, buy it today.
No!
But it's got Marvel on the cover.
Ugh, fine. You guys suck.
We know, just give us the money.
Welcome back, everyone. That funky little track was from the end theme of The Incredible Hulk on the SNES.
I got one thing to say to you.
That is...
Wow.
Wow. It's like a little cat meowing.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I picture like a little cat on the Hulk's lap. The Hulk's just sitting on a subway train, you know, in the subway. And
Just petting a little kitty.
you know, yeah, and he's petting a little kitty, and then the kitty's just like,
Meow.
On the beach.
Meow. Meow.
I can see it. I like it. I like it.
That's what I'm feeling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You ever played this game?
I've played it very, very briefly. Like, we're talking, I put it in and played it and was like, this is garbage.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah, no.
No, it isn't.
No.
I like the music, though, because it's very unique.
It is.
It's got a sound font that I've never heard in any other Super Nintendo game before. And it's really funky and catchy.
Yeah. No, I really dig this track. There's parts in it, though, that sound like FM synth.
Yeah, that Moog bass.
Right.
Really
yeah,
does.
it's like almost like a Moog, you know, organ, but it's not.
It is not. The whole soundtrack almost sounds like a live band. It uses really accurate samples. I don't know. The game is a side scroller that kind of feels like it was just kind of slapped together. I don't even know. Was there like anything Hulk oriented going on at that time, or did they just decide to?
No, they just
put
made a
something
game.
out?
Yeah. No, they just kind of were like, let's make a Hulk game. There was no real big thing that was going on, if I recall, in the Marvel universe. I mean, I like Hulk, but I don't read the comics. So the only comics that I ever kept up with were the X-Men comics, and then I just lost, I don't know,
Yeah,
faith in comics. I don't know. Just, it's expensive. You know what I mean?
It is.
And I love it. The problem is I love video games, but I also love comics. And so it came to a point where I was like, I gotta pick one
gotta be
because
one,
I can't afford both. I mean, I think the highest amount I was spending monthly for at least a period of a year was like $50 a month on comics. And I was like, I can't afford these. And like I would buy them and then they would, which kills me. This is what kills me about comics, is they'll restart the line. So they'll be like, all new, all different. And I'm like, it's not though. It's the same team or a slightly different team.
you're just putting things back to where they were before they screwed everything
and
up.
I hate that because I'm slightly autistic when it comes to numbers. So like I want to collect like issue 1 to issue 200.
So you're more OCD than...
Yeah, OCD than autistic, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you know, when I was younger, my brother is really into comics. So he would buy the comics and he would, you know, read them and leave them out. And so I would just read his. And so I would kind of get into the series that he was into because it was nice and I never had to buy any comics. I would just read what he had.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, you know, after I moved out and he moved out, you know, I didn't really get back into it. I'm a fan of the movies. The Marvel movies are really awesome.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But, you know, these games are more from the era when I was into comics, which is nice.
Right.
So now I'm just kind of, you know, watching the movies and appreciating them for what they are, but I'm not kind of keeping up with the current comics.
Yeah, no, I haven't bought a comic in years, so I don't know what's going on in the current. I think the last thing I heard was that they made Iceman gay or something like that, and I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
coming out.
Yeah. But overall, I think the games that we've picked for the most part, I agree with you, are of that era where we played games and read comic books. So it kind of makes sense to have these games in our podcast.
Exactly.
So,
Not that the Incredible Hulk game was really memorable or even
True.
really kind of followed any sort of comic series at
Right.
all. I just wanted to pick it because it was, cool sounding.
I like this track a lot. I really like the funk sound to it, and despite joking about the cat meowing, I think it's a really groovy track that you could really bob your head to.
Yeah, and I kind of noticed that it was, even when I rented it when I was a kid, that the soundtrack did kind of sound unlike anything else I'd heard out of the Super Nintendo before. It was composed by Steve Collett, who more popularly goes by the name Steve Rocket. He has his own sound studio called Rocket Sound.
Okay.
And he started off as far back as 1986 doing Trivial Pursuit. He did the sound driver for Terminator 2 Judgment Day. He worked on the sound effects for Disney's Aladdin, Alien 3, and just tons and tons of stuff. Music for Acme Animation Factory. He also did the music for X-Men Mutant Academy. And as recently as 2013, he was working on the CSR Racing series of games, which is primarily mobile series. It's like drag racing cars and stuff on the iPad.
Oh, okay.
But he's still he's still in the industry today, doing music as recently as 2013. So he's doing a lot of cool stuff.
That's neat.
Yeah, not much else to say about this game. I just wanted to play that soundtrack because it's fun.
Yeah, no, it's a really fun, happy, goofy track.
Yeah, that was the staff roll track. The other level, action-based songs are just that. They're a little bit heavier, a little bit faster, a little more like breakbeat style with some like acid jazz. And this one is more like a straight up kind of smooth lounge music kind of track. Exactly. And
This
this
is the Meow song. It'll always forever and will always be known as the Meow song.
I'll go with that.
Okay.
That's fine. The Hulk meow.
The Hulk meow
song.
Right, Meow.
So speaking of X-Men Mutant Academy, our
Speaking of
next track.
cats.
Our next track is from X-Men Mutant Academy 2,
Yes.
which Steve Collett did not compose the soundtrack for the sequel. This one was composed by Kerry James Chico. Not to be confused with Kerry Chico, who was an executive at Activision. This
You
is
sure?
Yes,
Isn't this an Activision game?
it is.
That's weird.
Makes it even more confusing.
That is weird. So there were two people with the same name that both worked at Activision?
Yes, well, Kerry James Chico now goes by Kerry James, I guess because of that closeness and because of the same name. So
Makes sense.
You can find his stuff at kerryjamesmusic.com, and he's got tons and tons of credits. He works mostly for film, although in the past he had done the soundtracks for MechWarrior 2, Civilization, Shanghai, Call to Power 2, mostly like Activision PC games or simulation-style games. He worked with Steve Collett on X-Men Mutant Academy, and then after that started doing stuff for iOS and stuff. A lot of like holiday-oriented games like Snowman 3D and Pumpkin 3D and
Oh, snap.
I don't even know. He's been doing some slot machines too, so he did the Godfather and Hansel and Gretel slot machines and some stuff for 505 games.
Pretty wide range.
Yeah, so he's got credits all the way up to 2014, so he's definitely still in the biz doing lots
Stuff.
of music. I like this whole soundtrack for X-Men Mutant Academy 2. It's very layered. It's got a kind of a heavy, gritty, industrial yet cinematic sound to it. There's a little bit of metal here and there. Really nice drums. It's just kind of a cool soundtrack that kind of stands out for me on the PlayStation. The game itself was pretty cool too. It was built on a super advanced version of the engine that ran the original Wu-Tang.
Oh, the
game.
Shaolin Monks
Shaolin
game?
Monks that was based on the Thrill Kill game, which never came out due to censorship reasons.
That's right.
So this is more of a one-on-one than a four-on-four kind of a fighting game. It's got really solid graphics. It's got a whole roster of characters that you can play as. So it's not even just the X-Men. You can also be Spider-Man. You can be villains like Mystique and Toad, and it's got a lot of cool guys in it and a lot of cool
Spider
moves.
Dude.
Had a lot of fun playing this.
Yeah.
Did you ever play it?
I've not played X-Men Mutant Academy 2. I've played one of the sequels on GameCube, which was X-Men Next Dimension, I believe it is. And I just remember the really silly...
Next Generation? Was that?
No, Next Dimension is the name of the game. I just remember the really silly voice acting in that game.
I don't think I played that one, so I don't remember.
I remember Cyclops specifically. Every time, because every time a character would start, you'd pick a character, so it's a fighting game, so you would pick a character, and let's say I pick Cyclops, for example. When the battle starts, they would both say their little lines or whatever, like in most fighting games. And so Cyclops, one of his lines was, "Heart is what wins battles." And I was like, I always thought that was hilarious.
That is pretty funny.
So that is the only thing I remember about that game. But I remember having a lot of fun with it. The only thing that kind of bummed me out is that Wolverine was not played by Cal Dodd, who did the voice of Wolverine. In my opinion, the only voice for Wolverine.
Very, very
Hugh
recognizable
Jackman.
voice.
Right. So I know he did the voices for Wolverine in like the Marvel vs. games.
Berserker Barrage.
Yeah, exactly. So to answer the question, no, I have not played the game. This track is pretty cool though. Like you said, very like industrial, very like, it is a good transition into what Marvel later did with their soundtracks in terms of orchestral soundtracks.
Yeah, this is kind of a good kind of balance between the more rock and the more kind of cinematic style. You're right. And this really is kind of where that era ends too, like 2001. This was a very late era PSX game. So, we kind of started transitioning into the PS2 games after this, where the music kind of got a little more
very
cinematic and orchestral.
Cinematic, which they were trying to match the Marvel movies, so that makes sense. I get it.
And there's nothing wrong with that music at all. It's just not my style, so I really prefer these kind of tracks better.
Yeah, I like when there's a mix. I can only really get into orchestral if there's a mix. Like, for example, the movie RoboCop. That soundtrack is phenomenal, and it's because there's this great mix of electronic music and
it's kind of a backbeat to the stuff.
And orchestral. It's really robotic, but at the same time, it's really uplifting and moving. So, when it comes to X-Men Mutant Academy 2, I think the soundtrack's good. I just think that it's kind of the beginning of the end as far as video game music goes, as far as, chiptunes. So
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, well, let's get into this track. This is Ambush from X-Men Mutant Academy, released in 2001 for the PlayStation from Kerry James Chico.
welcome back. That track was from Fantastic Four. It was fantastic.
It was. Too bad the game was not.
No.
Oh, man.
This came out for the PlayStation in 1997. So it was right, kinda, sort of in the beginning of the PlayStation era.
Yeah. They had no idea what they were doing at that point.
No. Especially with, like, licensed games. In terms of that.
Yeah, this was kind of a 3D beat 'em up. It had some good concepts.
Yeah.
But the animation, I mean, they look like marionettes the way they moved, or like
really?
like those Flash animations that you see on like Newgrounds of people that have like studied Flash for like 3 days and then decided to post something where things just move so awkwardly.
Yeah.
It's like 2-dimensional frames on a 3D back. Like the whole thing was just bad. Even the pre-rendered full motion video scenes at the beginning are like comically bad.
Really?
It's just so awful.
Like bad voice acting or just like video?
No, bad animation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
like like stick figures, kind of like moving around. Like I kind of represent Mr. Fantastic. It's just.
Let me stretch my arms that don't stretch.
It's not any sort of game to like look out for in the bargain bins.
That is a shame
at this point. The music, however, is
really good. Yeah.
It doesn't fit the game at all, though.
No.
Well, you might have a different opinion because you like that jazzy stuff and from your Marvel vs. Capcom 2 spiel.
Yeah.
You might think it fits a little better than I do, but for a side-scrolling beat 'em up, it's very funk, jazz, horn sections, and wind instruments, and not stuff that I would associate with punching aliens in the face.
I think that in terms of a beat 'em up, you can have a lot of different types of music, but it's got to be high energy. And this definitely, I've used that word way too much today, but I think when you're talking about Marvel Universe and you're talking about, superhuman superheroes, you gotta stick with music that's gonna be up there in terms of the energy. It's gotta be high energy. Can't be.
Oh no, I agree.
Like quiet or whatever. And that's why at least you need something that's driving.
Right, but high energy music can come in many different flavors.
Oh sure. Oh no, I agree.
What kind of music you're looking for?
This is a very funky song. This is very funk oriented.
Yeah, and it plays very early on in the game. I think it's like the first or second stage.
Right, and so I can understand that if the game set up the premise that it was in a time like the 70s or the 80s or somewhere where funk was appropriate, that would make sense. If you're talking about a game like Separation Anxiety, which takes place, pretty much in the 90s, it's very 90s oriented. The music is very 90s oriented. But if you're going with an old school Fantastic Four feel, then I think the music would have been okay.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Because you're going with a modern Fantastic Four team, or modern at the time, back in 97, it doesn't feel modern.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's kind of like mismatched puzzle pieces,
right?
Basically.
And so it's one of those games that the music is phenomenal. The game, not so much.
Right. Which happens a lot with Marvel games.
Very
unfortunately.
true. Very true.
There are some powerhouse composers behind this game. Stephen Root mainly was the composer for this game, and I saw his name and I'm like, why do I recognize that name? It sounds so familiar. 2 different reasons actually, and I didn't even realize that they were related. But Stephen Root is a popular character actor.
Okay.
But is not the composer that did this. It's spelled the same way with a PH in the Stephen. But you might remember him as Milton from Office Space.
Right.
Where's my red stapler? That guy. However, this particular Stephen Root is most popular for doing the Burnout series of games, the racing games.
Okay.
Which have fantastic soundtracks.
Yeah, those games are a lot of fun.
So he worked for Criterion. He did Burnout and then the Black, which was their kind of foray into a first-person shooter, which didn't really go beyond.
That's right, I remember that game.
It was pretty good, but... So he also before that did like stuff like Armorines, Project Swarm, Extreme G2, where he was the head of audio, kind of aggregated all the music from the different artists.
Right.
And did Hexen, which was a first-person shooter based on the Doom engine.
Theme of Doom, yeah. Going back to Armorines, that was an N64 exclusive, if I recall. And
he was the sound director for that game.
If I recall, the game itself was not very good, but have you heard the soundtrack at all? Is it any good?
I have not.
No? I'll have to check that one out.
For Armorines, he was also sound director, so I don't know whether he was the composer for it or not. He did composed the music for the Die Hard trilogy
No.
game on the PSX, which was pretty cool.
Oh, not the Die Hard arcade though.
Correct.
That was a great game.
Alien Trilogy. Oh, Die Hard.
Die Hard arcade.
Well, that was just Die Hard, not Die Hard Trilogy.
Well, it was Dynamite Cop 1, but they called it Die
Dynamite
Hard.
Deca. It was Dynamite Deca 1 and 2.
Yeah, that was Dynamite Deca 1, but
Yeah.
they brought it over to America as Die Hard arcade.
Right, but Trilogy was more of a standalone PSX game that
Right.
took place in
That's
all
right.
3 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he worked with Neil Palmer.
Oh, that's right.
Neil Palmer he's like a sound guy. I don't know. He tours with bands. He's a pianist, producer, composer, sound designer, and general keyboardologist, as he describes himself.
Okay.
But he does a little bit of everything. He does music for like stock music companies where you can, just buy music beds for podcasts or movies or TV or film. But then he also does his own stuff where he releases it by himself and stuff. So between the two of them, they created a pretty awesome soundtrack.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a listen. I'm going to end up posting it on my forum eventually
Cool.
once I get all the music tagged and stuff. But
Definitely.
it's a lot of fun. They did know they had a good soundtrack on their hands because when you go into the sound test in the game, it actually has like a spectrograph where shows the levels of the music and like has a whole like screen dedicated to the music and shows the music titles. And
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. You get to learn the titles of all the music and you can do a full-fledged music player within the
Nifty.
game. So that's really the only useful part of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Wow.
Yeah, speaking of composers that have careers outside of video games, our next game is X-Men 2 Clone Wars, which
Yes.
was released on the Genesis in '94.
This is a really fun X-Men game.
One of my favorites.
Definitely. It's really good. I mean, I wouldn't say it's better than the Super Nintendo Mutant Apocalypse game.
I'd argue with you
Yeah?
on that. I
Would
think I
you?
like it a little bit better.
Do you? Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. It's a lot of fun. One really weird moment in the game is when you turn the game on, because as soon as you turn it on, you're in the game.
Boom, you're playing.
You're in the game and you're getting shot
And
at.
you have a random character. It doesn't stay the same.
and you do not get to pick your character. So what I always did was I would
Keep resetting it until you get Wolverine?
Yeah, of course. Come on.
He was one of the best playing characters
Right.
in the game.
Yeah.
And Psylocke. I like both of them.
Yeah, Psylocke. Yeah, Psylocke was good. Beast was a lot of fun to play as. I think you play as Beast in that game, right? Gambit.
Yeah.
Gambit, Beast, Cyclops. I think you
Psylocke.
play as Magneto, right?
Later on,
You
can play as him
Magneto.
immediately.
Right. After you get through that level, then you get to this next level, which we're gonna play, which is the Sentinel Complex music. And the music was actually done by Kurt Harland, who is more well-known, well, I would say more well-known, for being in Information Society, which was a great 80s band who they still make music
Still
today.
going strong today.
Yeah, no, their latest album we were just talking about, Ed and I, and it's really good. So if you guys are into synth pop, definitely check out their newest album, Information Society, because it is really well done modern synth pop.
Yeah,
it's
it's a
not
good-
stuck in the 80s completely.
Right, it has those influences, like,
Yeah.
kind of like for classic InSoc fans, you'll find stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah.
But it also kind of brings it into the new era.
Definitely.
And Kurt Harland and the other members of Information Society kind of went their separate ways for a while.
Right.
Kurt got very dark. He released an album under the Information Society name called Don't Be Afraid,
Right.
which was like a very kind of depressing, not depressing, but very like industrial dance oriented kind of.
Okay.
And then the other members took the name back from Kurt and
Mm-hmm.
released another album on their own, but it was very bright and synthy. So you ended up having the same band name with
Yeah.
different members doing completely different styles of music. So this, I think, their last album is the first one where they're all together.
Right.
And it's kind of a really good combination.
It is, of the dark and
like
the
heft
light.
and brightness.
Right,
So it's
right.
a lot of fun.
No, I agree.
But this particular one, this track is kind of minimalistic and experimental.
Yeah.
And that's kind of Kurt's thing. He's a sound geek.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really kind of scratchy FM synths in this song where you can tell he's just kind of experimenting on things to do. And the Sentinel Complex is very, computerized and there's wires hanging down.
Yeah, it
and
makes
so kind of
sense.
fits the theme of the song.
It makes sense for it to be experimental because the Sentinels are an actual experiment.
Right.
So you're walking around these levels as whatever character you end up picking, and you're seeing these giant Sentinels. I mean, they were pretty much life-size, and then you'll randomly see like a random head, you'll see an arm, just just hanging out. And one thing I really like about this track is it always has this driving bass line in the
Bump, bump, bump,
yeah,
bump,
it's
bump.
just a really thick driving FM bass line. It's really good stuff. And then it kind of rolls into this, as you said, scratchy tones that are just, depending on what you're listening to it on, it can either sound really harsh or it can sound really deep. So, forewarning when we play this song for you, if it gets too obnoxious, I do apologize.
Turn down the treble, turn up the bass, it'll sound a little more friendly.
Yeah. And so I think, in all honesty, the things that he was doing with this track were not really heard much on a Genesis at all.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, I mean, this was a later Genesis game too, so it kind of had a little more advanced tech in it, I think. So
I think the X-Men 2 Clone Wars game is a little tighter than the first X-Men game for Genesis.
And a little bigger too. It's a longer game.
Well, I hated falling in the first X-Men game for Genesis because Jean Grey would come out of nowhere and be like, "Here you go," and pick you back up, and I'm just like,
"Thanks, babe."
Okay. I don't know. Just the whole first game was good, but it felt very stiff, and I think with Clone Wars, it felt a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They worked on their stuff a little bit more.
Yeah. Kurt Harlan actually worked on a lot of soundtracks. Ended up doing soundtracks for the Soul Reaver series, if I recall.
Yeah, and a lot of that music from Don't Be Afraid actually ended up in Soul Reaver. So that really epic track that begins at that's at the beginning of Soul Reaver, where the camera's kind of sweeping around the whole first level, is directly from the introduction of one of the songs on Don't Be Afraid.
Oh, okay. How about that? The more you know. Very cool. So I figure we'll get into the music. This is X-Men 2 Clone Wars from the Sega Genesis. 1994 was the year it was released in. And again, this track is called Sentinel Complex.
Synth pop for the win. If your neck isn't broken from headbanging now, welcome back. That was I guess we can call it CD track 20 from Iron Man Exo Manowar in heavy metal, which was put out on the PlayStation and Saturn in the year I graduated high school, 1996.
Wow, 96. Where was I in 96? I was still in middle school.
Looking at posters of Tifa.
No, because that game didn't come out till 97. So I was wishing...
You were reading magazines about Tifa.
I was wishing that I was looking at Tifa. No, I probably was looking at pictures of Marley or Marl, or whatever you want to call her.
Oh, okay.
Because I had a weird infatuation with her prior to Tifa. Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's a great game.
Chrono Trigger's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's not fantastic? This game.
This game sucks. I'm sorry, I'm not going to whitewash anything this time.
No, it's just so
Holy
funny
crap.
because you just came out right out and said it. Like normally you're like, well, there's some quality, like you kind of.
Yeah, no, there's no unpopular opinion gamer here.
No.
Oof.
I played this on the Saturn. It was pretty bad.
The Saturn version's even worse than the PlayStation version. And that's not even necessarily because of a gameplay. The only difference between the PlayStation version and the Saturn version is that the terrible full motion video sequences are a little higher resolution on the PlayStation version.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is neat. I'm not gonna say this was the last track we picked for this episode, and I think I was having trouble coming up with other games. It's a good metal track. I mean, it really reminds me of mid-90s Ministry and some of those bands, which I was really, really into back at that time. So this kind of threw me back to that era of music. And the whole soundtrack is heavy metal and or industrial. Kind of fits with the title of the game.
Yeah.
Was written by W. Gregory Turner. And he, back in the day...
W stand for?
I don't know, he just goes by W. Gregory. So probably William or something like that.
Wiener.
Let's not insult the man.
No. I mean hot dogs. Not wiener he is a wiener. He's a wuss.
Right.
No. He is actually a hot dog. Greg Turner
He's a hot dog composer.
Listen, it is impressive that W. Greg Turner, a.k.a. a hot dog, was able to compose this track.
Especially without getting mustard and ketchup all over the keyboard.
No, that's the worst part is while he was composing this track, people were throwing ketchup and mustard on him.
Goodness.
So he was just gotta get this to whoever developed this game.
Between these buns and I can't compose anymore.
Oh boy.
Greg Turner has worked on a myriad of different...
A plethora. A gaggle, if you will.
Yes. Starting back in...
1847.
The Game Boy era, he did Breakthrough, which was Alexei Pihitnov's sequel title to Tetris.
Wait, Breakthrough?
Breakthrough.
Wasn't that... No, I'm thinking of Breakout.
No, Breakout's the paddle game.
Yeah.
Breakthrough is where there's a big wall of blocks and they're different colors and you have to tap on the colors and you remove all the surrounding colors that are there. You have to clear the whole board.
Yep.
He did the PlayStation version of Land Before Time. He did Crusader No Remorse, Big Sky Trooper on the SNES, Tales and the Music Maker.
Ooh.
Tales Sonic.
Like Sonic Tales? Really?
Yeah, it looks like a PC DOS game.
Oh, that makes sense.
Barbie's Ocean Discovery for the Game Boy Color. Land Before Time on the PlayStation.
Oh, love it.
Elmo's Letter Adventure.
Oh, man. Just keep it coming.
Sesame Street Sports for the PlayStation. Are we getting better here?
Yeah.
Rugrats for the N64. Casper for the PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
Bug and Bug 2 for the Saturn. Those were decent games.
Oh.
I mean, as compared to the other Saturn titles.
Keep it going. Come on.
Army Men Attack 2 for the PlayStation 2.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. What else? Real Monsters for the Sega Genesis. Yes.
Real Monsters.
Yes. And then he, after that, of doing really crappy licensed video game titles, decided to get into B-movies.
All right, then.
Yes.
Because there's a difference.
So films like Those About to Die, Center of the Web, To Sir with Love 2.
To Sir with Love 2?
Sir with Love 2.
Really?
Raw Nerve.
They made a sequel to To Sir with Love.
Yes.
That
Starring
is
Sidney
horrible.
Poitier.
Really?
Yes.
He was in it?
Yeah. Eyes of the Beholder, not the Yuzo Koshiro composed role-playing game.
Right. It was a PlayStation game, wasn't it?
Holy Man Undercover.
Okay.
Trooper and the Legend of the Golden Key, which is a dog-based movie.
Ooh.
The Penguins of Madagascar, Dr. Blowhole Returns, which is a Nickelodeon special.
Man,
The Stray.
this is the most
The Little
epic...
Ponderosa Zoo.
What?
And Bandit and the Saints of Dogwood, which is
This-
another dog-based movie.
This hot dog is the most impressive hot dog I've ever heard of.
Don't forget Chihuahua 2. Too much dog gone fun.
What?
And The Christmas Cult.
Okay.
So regardless of the quality of the productions in which Greg Turner's music appears in, I'm sure that the soundtracks are of utmost quality.
His name is W. Do not forget that W.
W. Gregory Turner.
Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
You celebrate his wienerness.
Wow. I don't know where this hot dog thing came from.
Maybe I just want a hot dog.
Kind of scary.
I don't know.
It does not say what the W stands for, but probably because he doesn't want to go by
It stands
that.
for wiener. He is a hot dog, good sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but in any case, the game, not that great. It was
No, you already said it
side-scrolling
sucked.
3D.
Yeah.
You could play as Iron Man or Valiant Comics Exo Manowar. The only thing different between them was that they
Color.
look different. Different
Weapon,
sprites.
Slightly different weapon.
And even when I say sprites, I'm kind of putting that in quotes because they were like pre-rendered.
rendered.
Like that Flash animation
The
again.
game was a mess, and I remember it being very difficult as well. And I remember not having fun playing it. I got it in a lot of Saturn stuff that I bought for like $50 off this dude, and I got like a lot of really, really good stuff. And this game happened to be in it, and I was like, I'll check it out. Put it in, start playing it, and almost vomited. So
It was like one of those deals where I think there was an Iron Man Exo Manowar crossover comic series.
I think there was, yes.
And they were like, let's make a video game about this. Everybody will love it.
Everyone loves
They were
Exo
like,
Manowar.
Okay, let's do some sort of a bad Contra clone and
Yeah.
shove it out the door.
Sure. Listen,
It's unfortunate.
that era, that's pretty much what happened. You know,
Oh, yeah.
licensed
absolutely.
games, they were just like, screw it, let's just lose money.
Yeah.
So let's lose money hand over foot.
Fortunately, but I don't even think they were losing money. I think because, people would buy it strictly because of the license and not necessarily care too much about reading the reviews. I mean, at 96, you're kind of pushing it because the internet was kind of catching on.
That'd be like if they
a little
released a Marvel Connect game.
bit. Yeah. You could just shout catchphrases at the screen.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's an idea worth billions.
Oh boy. All right. So Greg Turner, W. Greg Turner.
W. Gregory Turner, hot dog extraordinaire.
Hot dog, mascot of the world for video game music
Cool, man.
composers. Game sucks. Anyways, so that is pretty much going to do it for our Marvel episode. And I had fun. I don't know about you.
I learned a lot actually picking tracks for this.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about games that I
Would never play ever again.
Well, I don't know. It reminded me of a lot of games that I've played in the past but haven't touched since then.
Right.
And then going back and kind of refreshing my memory brought back a lot of good memories. And I realized that, especially those Capcom games and like X-Men 2 Clone Wars,
Right.
they really hold up pretty well.
They do. Yeah. No, that's very true. I mean, you could still pop them in and play them, and they're still great.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, even in Marvel superheroes, like, a lot of the sprites, they kept the same for, like, Marvelverse, Capcom, and a lot of those titles. They use the same kind of basic movesets and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of like fighting game elements in those games.
Yeah, but even, like, the artworks and the particular moves that they use were reused in those one-on-one fighting games.
Some of them were, yeah.
Yeah, not all of them, of
No.
course, but Spider-Man, I think, was the most like his Marvelverse Capcom counterpart.
Right.
So they were fun.
Yeah. What are some of your Marvel games that you all listen to as far as like game soundtracks? Let us know. Tell us in the comments or, on the YouTube page.
I want to hear
or-
your Marvel memories,
Yeah.
comics or video games.
Definitely. So if you're listening to this and you want to comment on it, go to youtube.com/dongold or go to the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/PixelTunes Radio.
Exactly, or you can follow us on Twitter at PixelTunes Radio.
Right? You can share your memories, your Marvel memories, your marvelous memories with us.
And also check us out on iTunes. Don't forget to give us a rating and a review. We would really appreciate it.
Yeah, if you haven't done so already, we would really appreciate a review because that's what spreads the love for the show and, you guys sharing it and talking about it. So we really appreciate you guys talking about the show and spreading the love. So definitely thanks for listening as usual. and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Have a marvelous couple of weeks, dudes.